Hello, Algebra 1 students. Welcome back. Today we are going over chapter 5.1, starting a new section, the absolute value function. So the first learning target is going to be I can graph an absolute value function using a table. So last section we were graphing using a table. This is the same thing, same success criteria, only specifically we're looking at the absolute value function. So let's just review the steps here. So the first thing you do is you take your x value, plug it in. Then you simplify, that gives you your y value or your f of x value. Go through, complete the chart for steps 1 and 2, finish the chart, and then finally graph it. So let's try that. Let's look at number 1. Graph the absolute value function. So step 1, take your x value. So I'm going to start with -2, and we're going to plug it into the function for x. If you want to use your calculator, just a quick review, you go to Math, over to Number, enter, put in your value, and there's your answer. Remember, absolute value is the distance from 0 on the number line, so -2 is 2 places from 0. It's always going to be a positive number because distance is always positive. So really I can just take all these numbers, since we're not doing anything but finding the absolute value, and just make them positive. These are already positive, so that's not going to change. And then go ahead and graph it. So we plugged in the value, we simplified to get our y, or f of x value, complete the chart. Now we're ready to graph it. So -2, 2, -1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 2. And remember, we learned that absolute value makes that V shape. So you're looking for that V shape. If it doesn't turn out like a V, something probably went wrong over here in the chart. Okay, go ahead, pause the video, try this one on your own. Complete the chart, graph it. If you want to use your calculator, this is what it would look like. 2, and then we're plugging in the absolute value of -2 here. We're plugging in that -2 in for x. So I got my 2 from there. Now math. Over absolute value, plug in your value, -2, enter, answer is 4. And then we're going to fill in the chart. And graph it. Remember, it's going to be a V. Your graph should look like that V shape. There you go. Okay, so that's our first learning target, and we'll practice some more of that, but I want to go on to our second learning target. So the second learning target is I can analyze the absolute value function. So there's 4 things we're going to be analyzing today that are associated with the function. The first one is the domain, then we have the range, the vertex, and the axis of symmetry. There is a 5th one, the rate of change, and that will be covered in the next video. So let's start with domain. Domain is the set of x values, the inputs. We've talked about that before. And then range, of course, is the y values, the outputs. Okay, so let's just look at that. When you're finding the domain, we're looking at the graph. The domain is all of the x values possible. So if you remember, these arrows here mean that the graph, or this part of the graph, is going to keep going on and on forever in this way. And then this arrow means it's going to keep going on and on forever that way. So I'm looking at my x values for domain. Here's your x-axis here. This is the x-axis. So these are my possible x values. Now the arrow is going on and on this way to the left. It's getting further and further to the left. So as we go further and further on the left of the x-axis, you're going towards negative infinity. Since this never ends, you're gonna keep going on to negative infinity. Same thing on this side. This keeps going further and further to the right. That arrow means it's never gonna end. It's gonna keep going in the right direction, which means you're going towards positive infinity. Now a domain is the x values, and when you're looking at your graph, you're starting on the left to right, or lowest to highest. Left to right, or lowest to highest. So what does that mean? The further we go to the left, we're getting to negative infinity. The further we go to the right, we're going towards positive infinity. Lowest is the negative infinity, highest is the positive infinity. Domain is left to right, lowest to highest, okay? Now, using interval notation, infinities always get parentheses. So the domain is negative infinity to infinity. Now let's look at the range. So the range is the y values. And this time, here's your y-axis here. It's going up and down. So this time we're gonna go bottom of the graph to the top of the graph. The lowest point on the y to the highest point on the y. So the bottom of your graph is right here. That's the lowest point of your graph. And remember, range is y. Okay, and domain is x, but range is y. So at the bottom point of your graph, what is the value of y? This is the point 0, 0. So the y value is 0. So the lowest point of my graph is 0. Now the highest point, as I go to the top, so bottom to top, remember these arrows mean it's gonna go on and on forever up. It's gonna keep going up to infinity up here, all the way up to infinity. So the bottom is at 0, the top is at infinity on the y-axis. Remember, infinities get that parenthesis, and since that is a solid point, that is a number, that's going to get my bracket for interval notation. All right, let's try another one. Let's try this one for domain and range. Fill in this real quick. So domain is the x values left to right, lowest to highest. The range is the y values bottom to top. lowest to highest. So this is on, you're looking at the x-axis, the x values, and this you're looking for the y values, you're looking at the y-axis for that. All right, let's try it. So let's start with domain. So x values left to right. Here's my x values here. Left. What is the furthest point that the graph goes to the left? It keeps going, so eventually it's going to get to negative infinity. What is the highest point on the x that the graph is going? It's keep going this way in the positive direction of the x axis there. So it's going to go to infinity. And those both get parentheses because infinities get parentheses. Now let's do range. So y values bottom to top, y values low to high. So I'm looking at my y values here. I find the bottom of my graph, it's right here at the bottom. What is the y value there? Y value there is 0. Now, what is the very top value here? Well, those arrows tell me that it's going to keep going up forever, so it's going to go up to positive infinity. Parentheses there for the infinity. Numbers get the bracket. All right, so that's domain and range. Let's talk about vertex and axis of symmetry. So these are two new words. Let's go up here. So the vertex of the graph is the turning point. It's the turning point of the graph. And it is a point, it's a coordinate. So point x, y, turning point of the graph. So specifically for absolute value, if you have a graph that looks like a V, this right here is the vertex. Whatever that coordinate is right there is the vertex. Or if it was like this, if it was opening downward, this up here, whatever that point is right there, that would be the vertex. And this is also given as HK. And we'll use that more later. So the X value is the H and the Y value is called the K. So let's look at the vertex here for number 1. So I'm looking for that turning point, that sharp point of the V. So it's right here. What is the point right there? That is the point 0, 0. So I'm looking for the coordinate of that turning point, and there is 0, 0. Same thing down here. Here's my vertex, there's my turning point. That coordinate right there is the point 0, 0 as well. So that's the vertex. Fill that in. The turning point of the graph. HK. All right. Now let's talk about axis of symmetry. So this is the last piece to analyzing the function that we're going to learn today. So we've got domain, range, vertex, now lastly, axis of symmetry. So we've talked about how absolute value is a graph with symmetry. Basically, if you take these two pieces and you folded onto the y-axis, that they would touch together, okay? So here's your symmetry right here. What is the imaginary line that cuts the graph in half, making it symmetrical on either side? That's what you're looking for. So it would be right here for this one, right on the X, or right on the Y axis, sorry. Down here, same thing. If you folded the graph together, this is where you would fold, right here, this Y axis. That is called the axis of symmetry. And the way you find that, it always starts with x equals, and then you're going to put a number here, or a constant here, whatever the value of x from your vertex. So x equals the x value from the vertex. All right, so you always start with x equals. So if I'm finding the axis of symmetry, I'm going to start with, for my answer, I'm going to put x equals, that's how it starts. And then I'm going to look to my vertex and use the x value here. So another way to say it is x equals h. Remember how the vertex is given as hk? So whatever this h value is, that is the line of the axis of symmetry. X equals that number there. So let's just fill this in. X equals h. All right, let's do this one. Axis of symmetry. So you always start with x equals for your answer. Then you look to the x value of the vertex, which is 0. So that's your answer, x equals 0. All right, question 4. How do the domain and range of these two graphs compare? Well, let's compare them. Here's our domain, here's our range. What do you notice about that? They're the same. They are the same. All right, let's go on to the next page. And let's do question 5. So we've got, how do the domain and range of this absolute value and this absolute value compare? So let's find them. So let's find this one first. F of x equals absolute value of x. Domain, range. Okay, domain. Those are the x values left to right. So I'm looking at this graph right here. X values, so I'm going left to right. As the line goes this way, we're looking at the x here, it's approaching this negative infinity. As it goes this way, it's going towards positive infinity for x. Remember, domain is x. Okay, range. Range is the y values. Now we're looking at this axis here, these numbers here. We're starting at the bottom of the graph. So range is bottom to top. What is the y value at the bottom of the graph? It's 0. The top is going up to infinity. Okay, let's do this one. left to right on the x. Domain is x. So the further you go to the left, you're going towards negative infinity. The further you go to the right, you're going towards infinity. And then your range, bottom of the graph to the top of the graph. The bottom of the graph are these arrows keep going down towards negative infinity. So that's the bottom of your graph, negative infinity. The top of this graph here is right here at this point. Your y value at this point is 0. That would be your range. Also, let's just look at the vertex and axis of symmetry. The vertex for both of these is that same point, 0, 0. And they both have the same axis of symmetry, x equals 0. All right. Pause the video. And I want you to do 3 through 6. All right, let's check these. Show you how to pop this into your calculator really quick. So you're going to take the -2, plug it in for x. But I'm going to start by typing in this number here, this -2 here. Absolute value, go math, over, enter. Plug in that number, -2, and enter. You get -4. And you would continue to do that, plug in that, and so on. Okay, then you would graph it. Plot all the points. And remember, it's supposed to look like a V. There you go. This V is opening downward because of that negative out in the front. All right, going on to the next one. Plug in each one. Graph it. Plot these points. Make your V. Okay, plug it in. And graph it. Make your V there. And last one here. Let me show you how to do this one in the calculator. So you're going to start with the 4. So you're going to do 4 minus math over enter. Plug in your x value, -2, enter. So you get 2 there. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and graph it now. All right, so now they're graphed. Now we want to analyze it. So we have 4 things we need to do. We need to find domain, range, vertex, and axis of symmetry. So I'm just going to write that right underneath here. Domain is the x values left to right. And if you haven't done this yet, go ahead and pause the video and go through domain, range, vertex, axis of symmetry, and then start it back up. But if you have the domain for here, you remember you're looking at the x values left to right. So that's going to be negative infinity to positive infinity. Range, you're looking at the y values bottom to top. So the bottom of the graph is going towards negative infinity. The top of the graph is right here. You're looking at the y value for this point, and that would be 0. And that gets the bracket. Now the vertex is that sharp point, that turning point of the V right there. What is that point? That is the point 0, 0. That's the coordinate 0, 0. And then axis of symmetry always starts with x equals, and it's this value right here, the x value of the vertex, which is 0. Let's look at this next one. Domain, left to right, negative infinity to infinity. Range, bottom to top, 0 to positive infinity. Vertex, the sharp point right here, 0, 0. Axis of symmetry, always start with x equals, and it's this value right here, 0. All right, here's another one. Domain, negative infinity to infinity. Range, bottom to top, 2 is the bottom. So you're looking at the y value. What is the y value right here? It's 2. And then the top would be infinity. Vertex is this point right here. What is the coordinate of that point? That is the point 0, 2. X is 0, y is 2 at this point right here. Axis of symmetry, x equals this number right here, so x equals 0. That's your axis of symmetry, this line right here. Last one. Domain, negative infinity to positive infinity. Range, bottom of the graph keeps going down, so that's negative infinity. Top of the graph is right here. The y value up here is 4. Vertex, this point right here is 0, 4. And then the axis of symmetry, x equals that value 0. And that's your axis of symmetry. Okay, that completes the lesson for 5.1a. Tomorrow we will be finishing up with the rate of change. So I will see you for that lesson.